This is a river pretty much like any other, wide, deep, sometimes unpredictable, but always there from generation to generation, ebbing and flowing down the centuries. This is the River Mersey, in the north of England, a river that gave its name to a whole world of music and song. This river gave life as well, life to the countless thousands of people who worked upon its currents and upon its banks, people involved with ships and shipping. This river saw the birth of many new chapters in Britain's history as well, the lives of ships themselves, ships that were built on the western shores of the river at Birkenhead. The vast majority of these ships were built at one shipyard, Cammell Laird's. This is the story of the shipyard known as Cammell Laird's, from its humble beginnings, its pioneering spirit, through its dizzying successes, its tragedies, and its ultimate decline. Those who worked in Laird's tell their own stories and look back upon their lives at Laird's, the good times and the bad times, and their hopes and fears. This is the story of a shipyard, old ships and hardships.
They were really happy days then, which you'll never see again. Thanks to the Tory government, got to get that in. Yeah, they were bad times, but we didn't look at it that way them days. Because we were used to it. We used to go on the ale again. We'd go to get our wages and we'd go on the ale and just have a bloody good night, good day out. We weren't worried about the sack, but we knew we'd get to work again later on. And we did. In a very short time, we'd be back working again. I'd be working in Laird's or working shipyard or somewhere, you know. So it wasn't as bad as it is now, because you always knew the job had come up.
Shipping has always been in my blood. It's been, even when I passed to go to my previous work, I used to think, oh, the lad's getting on here. It would never leave you. Once you're a shipyard worker, as you could ask a lot of the other chaps, it never leaves you. It's always in your mind. In shipbuilding, it's a good industry, and well, it was a good industry. No, I was made up when I came back. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did, and I wouldn't have a wrong word said against it. Really, it was good. I enjoyed coming, and when people can enjoy coming to work, that's the main thing. Really, I enjoyed it.
Laird's began life in 1824 as the Birkenhead Iron Works in Wallasey Pool, building boilers. Its founder was William Laird, a Scot, who guided the Birkenhead Iron Works towards building its first ship in 1828. In the same year, William's son John joined the firm to engage in what was to be the shipbuilding battle of the century, convincing ship owners and the British Admiralty that iron ships were better than wooden ships, and that steam instead of sail was the way forward. In 1856, Lloyd's of London at last issues its first specification for iron ships. fame of this company even spread to Jules Verne. In his novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Captain Nemo mentions Laird's as the suppliers of his iron plates for his beloved vessel Nautilus. John Laird not only built a shipyard, he built a town too. The magnificence of Hamilton Square with its wide boulevards, a school of art and subscriptions to the General Hospital. He was elected as the first MP for Birkenhead, and on his death in 1873, shops closed and some 3,000 shipyard workers fell in behind the funeral carriage. His sons William and Henry took over the business. So where then did this come from? The Cammell in Cammell Laird's. Admiralty rationale at the time was for what we would call today package deals, and a Sheffield-based steelmaker, Charles Cammell, joined together with Laird to become Cammell Laird's in 1903. The partnership proved fruitful, and Laird built even more famous vessels. The rumblings of war brought Admiralty orders. The first of nearly 70 submarines that the yard built over the next 75 years. One small vessel that deserves a special mention was built in 1920. The Fullegar was the first all-welded ship in the world, and she was built at Cammell Laird's. In the same year, Laird's patented a protective mask for use by welders. Welding was a new art to shipbuilders, whose work was heavy and dangerous.
Socialist in the winter. I mean, you come to work and say on a wet day you'd be soaking bloody wet. You'd have to go straight on the job. You'd be soaking wet, you know, you're working with electricity. And some of the shocks you get off the welding gear, like, you know, it's terrible. That's some bad shocks. Especially using heavy electrodes like sticks, you know, things like that. You got a shock on a dam, you're wet, you can feel it, you know, really bad. Yeah, but conditions were very primitive. Even before I finished, some of them positions, them situations were there, you know. You come in to work, it'd be raining or snowing, it'd be soaking wet, you'd have to go on the job. The only advantage was you had the setup pins. If you worked in the beige, you were all right. You don't change your clothes, you know what I mean? Because it was dry on. But out on the slipway, even with accommodation with the lads, you know, you still had to go on the job wet. So it wasn't that situation never changed. The elements of weather, you say.
Worst time? Well, I'd say the worst experiences I've ever had down here is trying to work in a fog. It was really bad. You had to have the window open, and of course it caused a draft. You see, you had to have the window to try to see something. You see, as I say, them days there's no safety. As time progressed, it was foggy, like you just used to shut the crane down. And the boss would ask you to come down and give you some oiling and greasing to do or something like that down on the quay, you know. But in weather like that, when you had to have the window open to see anything. It was pretty rough, you know. Little electric fire we used to boil our kettles on, or put a pan on and do a sausage or something, you know.
Yeah, fry up.
Quite comfortable in the cabs.
Yeah, in the bad weather.
Yes, very. I love in the bad weather, you was out of it all. You used to feel sorry for the guys that were down on the quay wall, you know, working in all kinds of weather.
So how long did you work here for, Bill?
Well, close on 40 years.
Bearing in mind that people coming into industry nowadays are relatively middle-aged to us people coming in those days. We were 14 years of age, top wet. So you're quite juvenile. You've probably had reasonable toilets at home and in your school facilities, and then you come down to Cammell Laird and find that the toilets in your own shop are a wooden trough, pottery trough with a wooden railet across the top edge of it. No doors on the toilet or anything novel like that. It was just like hens on a perch. And your mother has already told you that you mustn't on any account expose yourself before any of these men. You never know what they've got on their mind. And the first thing you find, the only thing you can do is expose yourself in front of these men. After a few weeks you find that nobody's interested in you at all. They're interested in the football results in the Echo or whatever they've found to read, and finding a piece of paper to float down the trough, in some cases, set fire to it, so everybody gets their posteriors warmed by this piece of paper floating past to go out the main drain. So, yeah, you got used to those
Conditions were a
facilities.
bit rough then.
They were a bit rough in those days. Very vastly improved before I left this yard.
So what were the conditions like then, Dave?
Well, you never issued with any gear then. You know, you never got any such thing as heavy weather gear or anything like that. That's for your own.
Yeah.
When your child got home and got changed, at dinner time, you know.
Well, because why?
Wet.
Wet. Because you work in the wet weather.
Oh, I had to work in all weather. So.
What were the bosses like?
They were all nice. You never seen a great lot of them. You know, just you had to kind of charge hand on the job, live on the job. Well, then you see different, you know, different things for your pay and things like that.
Who's that?
You see in the form of your pay or whatever, you know. Never seen a great lot of them, only important.
You got a fire outside here on the slipway to keep you warm.
Oh, in winters, yeah, we used to. We wasn't supposed to, but we always used to have it. And when it was very cold, we used to put lifting gear by the fire, you know, get the frost out, shackles and things.
Oh, there's the cables and
Yeah, we used to leave them by a fire.
because they were frozen up.
Yeah, I'd say frost gets into them, doesn't it, if you look careful.
Was it a dangerous job?
Well, some people said so, but I worked long enough. I only had one accident, you know. There was quite a few people injured on it, different times, you know. But then again, there was people injured from all departments, you know. All jobs at that time, wasn't it? There would be a row, be a meeting, you know. Somebody'd run on the horses, they'd say, oh, well, let's call a meeting. So there'd be a strike, they'd all go. Especially if it was raining, they were all wet.
And where would they go then?
Castle.
Was that a good place?
So, yeah, just all go for a drink. That's the way the time was then, when they all went for a drink and then went home.
You went with me dad. Did you go with dad a few times?
Quite a lot we did that.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine.
The middle 30s brought orders for some of the most well-known ships that were built at Cammell Laird's. The first purpose-built aircraft carrier, the Ark Royal, was completed in 1933, as was the Achilles, later to be involved in the hunting down of the German battleship Admiral Graf Spee. The Clement, built in 1934 for the Booth Steamship Company of Liverpool, was the 1000th ship built at Laird. And in 1939, the Cunard Company accepted delivery of their new passenger liner for the transatlantic trade, the Mauritania. The guns of war were in action again in the same year, and Laird's did not let the country down. In all, Laird's built more than 100 fighting ships to defend this island, building an average of one ship every 20 days. Tragedy was to become one Laird's built vessel. The T-class submarine Thetis sank during her sea trials in Liverpool Bay in 1939, taking 99 souls with her, many of them Laird's men. This is still the worst submarine disaster in British history.
Incident that happened whilst I was in the Time Office, actually. Mr. Robinson, the Prince of Wales, the battleship, was then building, and Mr. Robinson, the deputy head of the Time Office, said, would I go and find a particular fitter on the Prince of Wales? I'd only seen the Prince of Wales from the quay wall at that time, and being reasonably wet behind the ears, I thought, well, the man says go and find this particular person. And the Lord must have been looking after me that particular day, because I went on the Prince of Wales and found this man down the bottom of the barbettes on the main gun turrets of the ship, and came back with him to the Time Office. So that was an introduction to a big ship, and that was a particularly big and fearsome looking ship.
At last the war was over, and ship owners had to replace their wartime losses and those ships that they had been unable to pension off because of the demands of war. Laird's was a busy place again into the 1950s.
Hostile working environment. It wasn't easy working on ships. People around you, working above and below you, you know. It was hostile environment, but Cammell Laird's had guys that compensated for it, because there were some great characters here.
wherever you go on the Wirral, you'll always bump into someone from Cammell Laird's, or who's had a relative working in Cammell Laird's. I mean, my brothers were here, my uncles were here. I had lots of friends in the neighbourhoods who worked here, you know. And I go to clubs where I meet guys now from Laird's, and we all swap yarns and things like that.
This place here, for anybody that was starting again, if the shipbuilding industry was still going as it was when I came here in 1940, I would strongly recommend anybody to send their sons here to serve their time as whatever, whether it be a joiner, plumber, engineer, because I think you will find that anywhere you went in Great Britain, you would probably meet a charge hand or a foreman in a car factory or Lever Brothers Soap Works or the Margarine Works, and find they'd all been brought from Cammell Laird's. Having served the time at Cammell Laird, that was the place to be. And there's no doubt in my mind, if not the greatest shipyard in the world, this certainly was one of the greatest shipyards in the world, and I would strongly recommend it again to anybody.
A particular high point came in 1956 with the launch of the second Ark Royal by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, now the Queen Mother. The first visit to the yard by a Queen of England. Many Laird's men remember this ship with affection.
My first sight of Laird's, when my father was working here, and I was home on leave from the Navy, and I came over to see the launching of the Ark Royal. And she went down into the river. It was a misty day. It was similar day to when they launched the Boulder submarine, the Unseen, and it sort of disappeared into the mist, if you like, you know. But at that time, when I was in the Navy, I never dreamt that I would be working at Cammell Laird. I would say the Windsor Castle was. I gained a lot of experience on that ship. I worked with a good spark on that one throughout. Mike Gannon, his name was, and the foreman was Billy McGurk. But no, we enjoyed it, and it was such a vast ship, such different work we were doing. So I mean, it was all interesting work. I enjoyed working on the ships. I mean, I did really enjoy coming to work. Some good workmanship on that ship. Murals, paintings, woodwork, you name it, it was excellent work, you know.
Another ship for the Royal Navy scored another first for Laird's, the guided missile destroyer HMS Devonshire, the first ever Navy vessel powered by a gas turbine propulsion system. Times were changing. After the Suez Crisis of 1956, oil became the dominant cargo for ships, and tankers were the order of the day. And they just got bigger and bigger. So Laird's needed more room. The largest privately owned dry dock in Britain at the time, the Princess Dock, was constructed. It was opened in 1962 by the Princess Alexandra. Technology was changing too, and Laird's had to move with the times. "1963 brought an order that was to bring another first to Laird's, their first nuclear-powered vessels, 2 Polaris submarines for the Royal Navy, Renown and Revenge. The race to give Britain a nuclear deterrent, for better or worse, was on. This contract was to bring great prosperity to Birkenhead and to the workers at Cammell Laird's. But not everyone agreed that it was a good thing. This was the beginning of Laird's association with the Barrow shipbuilding yard of Vickers.
Well, I was doing wooden work on them. You had a choice, you see. You had merchant work and Polaris. They give you a choice. And I used to back in. A few would just say you're not on. And that was one of the main reasons, the conditions. The conditions were atrocious. Terrible.
And we got the Polaris contract, which I believe saved the yard, but at the same time probably caught the yard out of step, and we never really got back in step after that, I don't think.
Another Laird's built submarine, HMS Conqueror, was launched in 1968, a nuclear-powered hunter-killer submarine. Her name became as well known in submarine annals as the Thetis. 40 years after the Thetis, it was this vessel that sank the Argentine battleship General Belgrano during the Falklands conflict of 1982. After the nuclear subs had gone, Laird's was left with little to do, and in 1970 the government of the day had to acquire a 50% stake in the company to ensure its survival. But in 1972 a new modernisation programme was started at Cammell Laird's. A huge shipbuilding hall was constructed in order to rid the shipbuilding workers of their oldest enemy, the weather. The programme was complete by 1978. In the meantime, the company was nationalised and became part of British Shipbuilders. In 1976, with a much reduced workforce, Laird's completed the first of 3 Type 42 destroyers for the Royal Navy: HMS Birmingham, Coventry and Liverpool. Laird's was denationalised and effectively swallowed up by its partner of the Polaris era, Vickers. Following the so-called peace dividend, work was thin on the ground. During the 1980s, Cammell Laird did what they could to survive. They built their first and last jack-up gas rig, and their first and again last oil exploration rig, the Sovereign Explorer. But there were no big contracts going, at least not for Laird's. 1991 saw another first at Cammell Laird's. This time, the first of the last. The Upholder-class submarines, HMS Unseen, HMS Ursula, and finally HMS Unicorn, were built for the Royal Navy. Less than 1,000 men were now employed at the shipyard. The last vessel to be built at Cammell Laird's, the submarine HMS Unicorn, left the yard in 1993, and Cammell Laird's closed down. Vickers didn't want Laird's. Nobody else wanted Laird's, and perhaps the most damning of all is the fact that the Conservative government, especially Margaret Thatcher, didn't want Laird's. Recent statements made by Sir Robert Atkinson, chairman of British shipbuilders from 1980 to 1984, verify that he was given direct confirmation of Cammell Laird's ultimate fate. He was told that Margaret wants rid of shipbuilding.
When I heard that, I was sick and disgusted what that woman was capable of, and all these people out of work, and also breaking the trade union movement down and shipbuilding.
Not at all. None at all. In fact, I missed it very much.
You
I missed the crack with the lads, you know.
Yeah.
The jokes.
Yeah.
The little larks that we used to have, you know. Actually, my brother holds the record for coming down these cranes, you know.
Oh, why?
Yeah, he fell 40 feet.
People at the top, you know, everything was altered for But the Polaris and anything else nobody bothered about. And I think they'd have carried on building the ships they were building, anything. They used to build anything. And they'd have still been going now.
If not the greatest shipyard in the world, this certainly was one of the greatest shipyards in the world, and I would strongly recommend it again to anybody. If I get into a conversation with my friends that were in the shipyard, it is almost inevitable that at some time we'll be back building ships, either on the bar counter or the table.
Where you've been this morning.
I still reckon that it was a grand design on the first instant to close Cammell Laird's.
A grand design from?
Vickers. It was all part of their grand design. I really believe that, because we were a competitor on the west coast of Britain, weren't we? And although they were the kingpins on...
Yes, yeah, and the governments really, they could have put work here, because really this is the main industry in the town. It's like a ghost town now. People still talk of Laird's, but it probably will never be forgotten. But it's a sad day when it did end, really.
The fact is that the famous naval and merchant vessels that defended this country, the men that built them, manned them, and often died on them apart. The pioneering engineering spirit of this shipyard apart. The building of what was then Britain's essential nuclear deterrent apart. The thousands of men who lost their jobs and their pride apart. And perhaps saddest of all, the countless thousands of young people for whom the Cammell Lairds of this country will never provide any real-life training or skills apart. The fact is, it's a simple and disgraceful answer. Margaret wanted rid of shipbuilding.